Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone. Today we're going to be speaking about a very important topic, which is the importance of seeking ilm. The importance of seeking ilm, because when we're talking about seeking ilm, always the question, and during our society, when it comes to seeking ilm, we usually think of degrees, and then the degree, and then the position, and then the money that comes in. But when we're talking about Islamic studies, it's very different. It's very different because, trust me, don't expect a lot of pay. Don't expect, those high positions, because so many within the Muslim community are right now targeting the ulama, targeting the Islamic knowledge itself. Al-ilm al-shari itself is right now targeted not only by those that are attacking Islam, but even by the Muslims themselves. So when we're talking about the importance of seeking ilm, there are a number of things to discuss here. So number one, why is it important after all? Well, number one is that when we're talking about seeking ilm, it's basically the that core of the person's taklif. The reason why they're held accountable is really because they're they've got a tool that other creatures don't have, and that tool is basically the tool of aql, the ability to understand, comprehend. In other words, the ability to use intellect is the main reason. But if intellect is not going the right direction, it can actually be something useless. So that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually says, وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا. When did he say that? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that when he talked about Adam alayhi salam, he was basically presenting Adam alayhi salam to the malaika and says, إِنِّي جَاعَلٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ خَلِيفَةً. And here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, well, I'm going to create another creature. قالوا أتجعل فيها ما يفسد فيها. Are you going to create a creature that's going to cause all the bloodshed and going to cause chaos in the world? ويفسد في الأرض ونحن نسبح بحمدك. We're doing all that you want, which is we're doing the tasbih, we're here, we're doing glorifying your name, we're doing all that. But here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells them that علم آدم الأسماء كلها, wanted to present to the malaika that what Adam has is something that even the malaika don't have, which is ilm. علم آدم الأسماء كلها would mean that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala taught Adam the names of things and let Adam know that he has something that even the malaika don't have, which is the ability to think, the ability to name things, the ability to understand how things function, and most importantly, the ability to have free will. And that's why when we talk about ilm, you can have the intellect, but you could easily get deluded if you didn't have the tools in order to distinguish right from wrong. Which is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the story and continues in the story to tell us that he was actually tested in the same exact thing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was preferring Adam over the malaika, which is when Iblis came, he was telling him, أَوَلَا أَدُلُّكَ عَلَى شَجَرَةِ الْخُلْدِ وَمُلْكٍ لَا يَبْلَى. Would you not want me to show you off a tree, شجرة الخلد, a tree where you will live eternally, وملك لا يبلى, and possession, property that will last forever, eternally, never ending. Now, with the same exact tool that was the tool which Adam was preferred over the malaika, is the same exact tool where the worst of the creatures, ash-shaytan, was able to delude Adam and actually make him get easily manipulated, thinking that the tree has that power to make him live eternally and actually get some type of power in where he's got the property over things. Well, when we also look at وَاللَّهُ أَخْرَجَكُم مِّن بُطُونِ أُمَّهَاتِكُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ شَيْئًا. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us from the wombs, or within our mother's wombs, لَا تَعْلَمُونَ شَيْئًا, where we absolutely have no knowledge over anything whatsoever. It is very easy to think that we have the tools to know different things. We could easily get manipulated into thinking that we've got the power to understand the world around us by thinking that our senses are strong enough to give us that power. Now here, we could see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala associated that with that our understanding and the purpose of our own creation is that to be able to understand, one, the most important tool of what you have in order to be held accountable, which is mind. Knowing that you've got the intellect, but your mind may actually be a place of delusion and manipulation without you realizing. You can think of another tool and think that feelings can be strong enough to help you realize the world around you, and that you've got all the things that you need in order to recognize or define the things around you. And you can easily think that I can depend on my feelings, or I can learn more about myself and the world around me and determine right and wrong using my feelings. But then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us that, well, there's something else that you need, which is al-wahi. Al-wahi, which is the revelation that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had sent. Well, there are a number of things that in order to seek knowledge that is going to keep you away from delusion and manipulation, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made seeking ilm as obligatory. Why is seeking ilm obligatory? Well, seeking ilm is obligatory because in order for you to find any light in the world, you need a very important thing, which is, number one, the connection between you and the one that founded this world. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق. The first thing, before the Prophet ﷺ was given any revelation, the first and the beginning of the revelation was actually start pondering, read. باسم ربك الذي خلق. But when you want to read, don't read any certain philosophy just like that, in considering that that philosophy somehow, because of deep thought and deep ponderance, that they somehow are going to give you the understanding of your world, the understanding of yourself, and the understanding of social dynamics, and the list goes on and on. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told you, read in the name of your Lord, that you make sure that the first and the most important start into knowing the world about you, and knowing the details about you, and the truth about the world that surrounds you, is actually by knowing Bismi Rabbika alladhi khalaq, by the name of your Lord that created. What does that mean? Meaning that there's a creature, and there's the creation, and there's the creator. The creator himself created the world, and the purpose of creation preceded creation itself, meaning that the purpose of creation was founded before even the creation. Meaning what? When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala emphasized alladhi khalaq, that is in order to remind us that, remember, that when we're talking about creation, creation itself cannot be the source of your information on the purpose of your creation, because the purpose preceded your creation. خَلَقَ الْإِنسَانَ مِنْ عَلَقٍ. Well, the one that created man from alaq, the one that created man from alaq. Al-alaq is basically something very small, but just taking us into the different stages and taking us that those stages don't necessarily enable you to know everything about yourself, because you yourself, even when you were alaq, there's absolutely no way that you can know every detail about the world around you and about even yourself when you yourself were simply helpless. اقرأ وربك الأكرم. Read, and your Lord is most generous. He's going to give you. He's not going to leave you created without giving you the inspiration, without giving you the means and the tools to help you navigate the world around you. But الذي علم بالقلم, every single science, every single knowledge, there's always a pen in order to preserve it. And that's why when we're talking about طلب العلم goes in different categories. The first, طلب العلم, starts with استماع. First, listen. Then, memorize the words. Third, try to think about it. Fourth, that's when you're able to connect the things, and that's when you will get the understanding and the fiqh of it. But علم الإنسان ما لم يعلم, it is again reminding you and connecting you with the very beginning of the creation, that you were just simply nothing. Well, that nothingness that you started out with in the beginning is just connecting you. That ما لم يعلم, even the information that you have is really from nothing, but it was really granted to you by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. علم الإنسان ما لم يعلم. But in order to go on to the path, to navigate the world and understand why and what I'm supposed to do in this world, the Prophet ﷺ said, طلب العلم فريضة على كل مسلم. Seeking ilm is obligatory on every Muslim. وإن طالب العلم يستغفر له كل شيء. And the one that seeks ilm, everything that surrounds that student of ilm is going to seek forgiveness for that person. حتى الحيتان في البحر. Not only everything, but even, and this is telling us that including the whales in the seas will also do istighfar for those that seek ilm. When we look at ilm, why is it important? Because number one, ilm enhances your spirituality. What does it mean to enhance spirituality? Enhancing spirituality actually means where you go beyond that surface and the shallow understanding of the world around you, where you only see the materialistic side of the world around you. So you go beyond that surface, you go beyond the shallow side of it, and you go deeper in where that understanding of the world is connecting you to the ultimate creator, is connecting you with something deeper, with your Lord Almighty. And that is why in the hadith narrated by Hudayfa ibn al-Yaman, when it was Sahih al-Albani, he said فضل العلم, that the Prophet ﷺ actually said فضل العلم خير من فضل العبادة, that seeking ilm and the importance of seeking ilm is higher than the importance of performing a ritual. وَخَيْرُ دِينُكُمُ الْوَرَعِ, and the best of your deen is when you have il-wara'. What is il-wara'? Il-wara' is the highest level of spirituality, in where you're connecting yourself. What is خَيْرُ دِينِكُمُ الْوَرَعِ? خَيْرُ دِينِكُمُ الْوَرَعِ, it actually is telling us that what leads to this, which is the highest level of spirituality, is seeking ilm, is actually seeking ilm. And that's why he said وَخَيْرُ دِينِكُمُ الْوَرَعِ. In order to get to the level of al-wara', you have to get to finding the tools that will help you see the world around you more than just the surface of things, more than just how things function, but to get the feeling, that connection, that intimate connection between you and the things around you to connect with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to relate with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually speaks about the world around us, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells you, you want to really know who Allah is, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would always turn our vision, turn our sight, our focus into looking at the world around us. Sama, al-ard, yourself, the world, the shams, the moon, everything around you, in order to train you how to look beyond even the surface around you. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يرفع الله الذين آمنوا منكم والذين أوتوا العلم درجات. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala elevates the believers and those that are seeking knowledge, elevates them in different levels. The stronger, the more you ponder in the creation around you, the more you are able to see that this creation was created by a magnificent creator. Therefore, then you will see farther than the world, than the surface of things, to actually seeing behind the creation a magnificent creator. That's why the Prophet ﷺ says, من سلك طريق العلم سهل الله طريقا إلى الجنة. That's why the Prophet ﷺ says, whoever من سلك طريقا للعلم, whoever takes a path, a certain path to reach, in order to navigate, a path to ilm, a path to knowledge, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will ease a path to Jannah, because you cannot separate the two. Once you go beyond in ilm, once you're elevated in ilm, once you take a certain path, then that path leads to Jannah. Then that path should get to you into a spiritual elevation, and finally Jannah. The second reason for talab al-ilm is basically ilm and how it affects the behavior, how it affects the manners. And that's why the first and most important manner that we learn is the manner of tawadu'. The manner of al-akhlaq are generally based on tawadu'. It's generally based ضاع العلم بين اثنين. Scholars used to say ضاع العلم بين اثنين. Seeking ilm is lost between two things. One, الكبر and الحياء. الكبر, which is الكبر, pride. You are too proud to consider seeking ilm from someone. Why? Because you would think that you are the center. And the other one is الحياء, is shyness. You're shy to say, I don't know. And that's why when we talk about akhlaq, the akhlaq, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teaches us to say, وَقُلْ رَبِّ زِدْنِي عِلْمًا. Use that as a form of dhikr, as a form, you repeat it, Oh Allah, zidni ilma. Oh Allah, increase and enhance my knowledge. Increase and enhance my knowledge, zidni ilma. It's a way of acknowledging that I don't have the ilm, that I'm still ignorant, that there are certain things, no matter how educated I am. And this was something that even the Prophet himself was taught to say repeatedly. وَقُلْ رَبِّ زِدْنِي عِلْمًا. And say it over and over again, because no matter how high and no matter what type of a degree you got, at the end of the day, وَفَوْقَ كُلِّ ذِي عِلْمٍ عَلِيمٍ. Beyond every single scholar, there is the ultimate one that is beyond all knowledge, and that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When we speak about manners, ilm adds onto our manners. Why? Because discipline and adab and tarbiyah is based on those four items: patience, determination, which is al-azima, consistency, and principle over inclination. When we speak about each and every single one of these are things that we have to do, that constant training. And that's why when we talk about those four items, teach them to your children, that in order for you to grow in your discipline, to grow in your humility, to grow in the way you deal with people, And even in your life, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave you the ability to have the patience and the coping skill. But if you cannot train yourself on seeking ilm and actually learn to be patient in seeking ilm and wait to seek the ilm, and which is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us the story of Prophet Musa alayhi salam with Al-Khidr, in where the story was really about if you need to see the world, you need to see how struggles, and that you have to be humble. Don't rush in wanting to know things right away. There has to be the time. There has to be that consistency, and there has to be that determination to take that moment after moment in order to grow. But at the same time, your own inclinations will sometimes overcome you to make you feel that this is boring. I want something entertaining. One of the major illnesses that we have in our society is always focusing on entertainment. That's why entertainment and seeking ilm cannot and do not go together. If you're constantly doing that entertainment, it's going to have a hook in your heart, and you're not going to find talab al-ilm as your place of entertainment, your place of love. You're going to just focus on entertainment because it is a lot dearer to our heart, because talab al-ilm requires patience and time and determination, consistency. But entertainment, it just relaxes you. Entertainment does not require patience because it all depends on good, pleasurable feelings. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ said, "Man kharaja fi talab al-ilm kana fi sabilillahi hatta yarja." The Prophet ﷺ said, whoever leaves their home for or to seek ilm, that they are fi sabilillah, that they are in a status, on a mission, fi sabilillah, for the sake of Allah Almighty, until they come back. Now, when we look at the term that is used, the phrase that is used, kana fi sabilillah, we always remember the word kana fi sabilillah hatta yarja. The context and the lexicon used is only used when we're talking about jihad in nafs. But the Prophet ﷺ correlated talab al-ilm with jihad in nafs because they require the same effort, because they require the same type of power, because they require the same type and the same amount of doing all the things that you might hate. That's what talab al-ilm requires. It requires a lot of work. It requires to put your life on that task, on that mission. Number 4, ilm enhances the cores of manners, التواضع. Number 1, in order to get to tawadu', Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا لِمَ تَقُولُونَ مَا لَا تَفْعَلُونَ. O you who believe, why do you say what you don't do? Why? Did it say what you don't do, and didn't say يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا لِمَ تَفْعَلُونَ? For example, why do you do things, or do things that for example, that you teach others, or etc. But said ما لا تفعلون كبر مقتا عند الله أن تقولوا ما لا تفعلون. Here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala related what you say, your speech, with what you know, and what you know connected to your actions. All those different angles are correlated with one another. Your speech, your behavior, and your knowledge. What is your mind constantly thinking of is going to affect your behavior. Your behavior is going to be, part of it is going to be your speech. Part of your behavior is your speech, and that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is teaching us that in order to grow in that there's one thing that what you have to learn is that to put your ilm into practice. The other thing that ilm does, which is enhancing your enhancing or even distancing. Lacking ilm or even ilm itself can either enhance their social relations into good connections, or it can distance one even in the social relations even after their death. The Prophet ﷺ actually says, من دعا إلى هدى كان له من الأجر مثل أجور من تبعه. Whoever would propagate, would teach, would spread guidance, then they would have the reward as those the reward of those that are doing the action. In fact, لا ينقص ذلك من أجورهم شيئا. Even the reward that they are getting, the rewards that they are doing because of following what you are asking them in guidance to do, then you too will get some of that share, not missing out, not even a deed. And whoever would promote any type of misguidance, then he will also get the ithm, the sin of that misguidance that they had propagated. And those that are practicing and those that follow that misguidance, he will also get the sin for it, not lessening and not even not reduced from what they have also done. At the same time, when we look at that social connection, the Prophet ﷺ also said, in where not only does it enhance or distance the relationship in the dunya, but even after somebody's death, where the Prophet ﷺ says, إِذَا مَاتَ الْإِنسَانُ انْقَطَعَ عَنْهُ عَمَلُهُ إِلَّا مِنْ ثَلَاثٍ. When the son of Adam dies, there are three things will still continue in enhancing and increasing their deeds even after their death. And mentioned, one, صدقة جارية, a donation that is still continuous and still taking place, أو علم ينتفع به, or a knowledge where people are still benefiting from. People are still using that ilm, أو ولد صالح يدعو له, or a pious child, still making a dua for that person. When we look at that, we could see that there is something more than just that in social enhancement or that social distancing. The reason why for all that is because a person that carries the ilm is actually carrying the Prophet's mission. Carrying the Prophet's mission is basically the ilm, and what they inherited is not the wealth. It is not the wealth, but it's actually the ilm. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells the mu'mineen, tells the Prophet sallam, فَاعْلَمْ أَنَّهُ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ وَاسْتَغْفِرْ لِذَنْبِكَ وَلِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ وَالْمُؤْمِنَاتِ. What ilm does it start? Well, ilm starts with knowing La ilaha illallah, that there's no God, there's no one worthy of worship but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But you also have to put in the practice of being humble, that no matter how strong you grew in your ilm, that in the end you will still have sins. فَاعْلَمْ أَنَّهُ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ. There's a foundation, the vision that you have to see the world, the vision, the lens that you see the world through, and also the vision in where you acknowledge who you are and that you will always have shortcomings no matter what. At the same time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala taught the Muslims, وَلَا تَقْفُ مَا لَيْسَ لَكَ بِهِ عِلْمٍ إِنَّ السَّمْعَ وَالْبَصَرَ وَالْفُؤَادَ كُلُّ أُولَئِكَ كَانَ عَنْهُ مَسْئُولًا. When you want to spread ilm, وَلَا تَقْفُ مَا لَيْسَ لَكَ بِهِ عِلْمٍ. Don't speak of things that you don't have knowledge of, because what you see and what you hear and what you see and even your heart, everything you're going to be held accountable for. So don't spread things that you don't have knowledge of. And that is why you need to get the ilm, because the Prophet's mission was propagated by first having the lens to know who your Creator is and how you put that into practice. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, شهد الله أنه لا إله إلا هو والملائكة وأولو العلم قائما بالقسط لا إله إلا هو العزيز الحكيم. Now when we look at this ayah, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had witnessed that there's no God worthy of worship but Him, the angels, and even those that acquired ilm, قائما بالقسط, they also stand on the justice that the Lord Almighty had defined. And here, لا إله إلا هو العزيز الحكيم, that there's no God worthy of worship but Allah, and He is Al-Aziz. If you don't decide, if you don't take the mission, the initiative, to be the Prophet's mission, to be like those that at least ulul ilm, then you won't be able to be part of those that are going to be able to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as He had defined worship to be in. And that's why He says, Al-Aziz al-Hakim, إنما يخشى الله من عباده العلماء. Because in order, when we look at the Prophet's mission, it was always starting from the core. إِنَّمَا يَخْشَى اللَّهَ مِنْ عِبَادِهِ الْعُلَمَاء. In order to make that core grow strong, it actually starts from seeking ilm and having the wisdom. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that the ones that really have the level of khashya, that really have the level of al-wara', that really have the level of complete piety and closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, are the ones that are ulama, the ones that seek the ilm. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that the ones that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will elevate the status of are those that seek ilm. And الَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْعِلْمَ دَرَجَاتٍ, raises their elevation and gives them those abilities in order to navigate the world more than the materialistic side, in order to grow. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, in the end, a person that knows is not equal to a person that doesn't know. In another thing, that ilm puts you on the mission or levels of the prophets. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually says, لَقَدْ مَنَّ اللَّهُ عَلَى الْمُؤْمِنِينَ إِذْ بَعَثَ فِيهِمْ رَسُولًا مِّنْ أَنفُسِهِمْ يَتْلُو عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتِهِ وَيُزَكِّيهِمْ وَيَعْلِمُهُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْحِكْمَةَ وَإِنْ كَانُوا مِنْ قَبْلُ لَفِي ضَلَالٍ مُبِينٍ. If we read the ayah in a different way, let's just see right here that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had blessed the mu'mineen, bless the believers, when He had sent a messenger for them from amongst them who was reciting the verses of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but reciting the verses meaning in where it is telling you the epistemology to knowing the world around you, but وَيُزَكِّيهِمْ, because it first starts with knowing the foundation, the epistemology to knowing the world about you and around you. But then yuzakkihim, ilm will not in itself correct you unless you actually do that actual tazkiyah, that actual purification, in order to go into the elevation. وَيُعَلِّمْهُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْحِكْمَةِ. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teaches them al-kitab. In order to get to that ilm, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given them the reference, that is al-kitab, that is al-Quran, and wisdom, in order to help them navigate things and understand how to apply the justices around them. وَإِن كَانُوا مِن قَبْلُ لَفِي ضَلَالٍ مُبِينٍ. Because before that they were in complete delusion. In other words, in another way, that without the ilm, then people would be in delusion. Without al-ayat, without the reference, which is al-wahi, people cannot depend on their mind or on their senses in order to understand what purpose is behind the world and what makes the world the way it is, and where are we heading in this world. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَإِن كَانُوا مِن قَبْلُ لَفِي ضَلَالٍ مُبِينٍ. If you don't go back to wahi, you're not going to be able to understand the things around you. When we speak about al-wahi, we're seeing the world and the status through the world and the status that surround us through the lens of who has the most valuables. What does that mean? Most of the times when we look at the things around us, we usually think that a person is rich because they have money, and a person is important because they hold a certain position. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Prophet ﷺ taught us that the most important, valuable thing that you can have, the most valuable thing that you can have is really ilm. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ actually says, "Man yuridillahu bihi khayra yufaqihu fi din." That whoever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants the best for them, then the most important thing that they will be granted is fiqh in deen, is the deep knowledge in deen. In this hadith, you could see it is actually muttafaqun alayh. And muttafaqun alayh would mean that is agreed upon between the scholars. And the Prophet ﷺ said, "Khayrukum man ta'allama al-Qur'ana wa 'allama." The best of you are those that have learned the Qur'an and taught the Qur'an. Why? Because they have learned the most important key to knowing about the world and navigating through the connection between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because of that value, the Prophet ﷺ said, لا حسد إلا في اثنتين رجل آتاه الله القرآن فهو يقوم به آناء الليل وآناء النهار ورجل آتاه الله مالا فهو ينفقه آناء الليل وآناء النهار. The Prophet ﷺ said that because of that value, there was one type of envy that is permissible. Two types. One is that a man who was given the Qur'an, memorized the Qur'an, and they're reading it throughout the night and throughout the day. And another person who was granted lots of money and they're spending it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala throughout the night and throughout the day. Now we see that when we're talking about knowledge, the most important, valuable knowledge is the knowledge where it relates to Qur'an. It relates to understanding guidance. That's why the most important thing to understand is really the purpose of life, knowing your Creator, how to reach the destination. And the destination that we're talking about is not the destination of getting a job or the destination of probably having some kind of a political status or whatever it is, but is actually the destination that is determined before the origination of your life, before your life, before even life in all, if it's all the different components that it is made up of, that before even life itself. How do I get to the purpose that life was created for before even life, and not existentiality? And it's not about making up. It's not about making up or creating a purpose, but it's about discovering the purpose that life was created for. And when we talk about that, it's all about knowing how to please your Creator. And because remember, your understanding in the world around you, it will have its impact on how you actually apply it in behavior. When we speak about understanding and understanding the Quran or understanding the purpose of life, that in itself is going to have the implication. That's why when we look at atheism, because their understanding of life is that life is just matter in motion, that's why their understanding of morality is that it's all about you and making your own reason and your own purpose in life. That's all the implication of morality. That's why there's no subjective morality in atheism. But in Islam, your understanding of the world, your understanding of the purpose of life is going to determine your behavior and is going to determine the justice and the definition of justice and how you regulate your life in every single corner in your life. And that's why when we speak about distractions from seeking ilm without us realizing, there are a number of distractions. Number one, our own nafs, can be that main distraction. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually tells us in Surah An-Najm that one thing that when the pagan Arab, when they had determined who their God is, they basically based on two different items: one, speculation, and their own inclinations, just their own inclinations, their own senses. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَقَدْ جَاءَهُم مِّن رَبِّهِمُ الْهُدَى, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had actually sent them guidance. When you look at those different ideas around you, it's really important to deconstruct, where is that idea coming from? Who is bringing that idea? Is it based on speculation that is projected to us that it is the latest study, and what latest studies and what the latest of the smartest have told us? Or is it based on our inclinations, certain lobbies suggesting what things should be looking like, or what our behavior should be based on? And in the end, is that the other part is that when we're talking about community delusions, and that's what's happening right now, is that when we're talking about community delusions, we're talking about that the community itself that is based on all that dhann and based on that hawa is right now determining our actions and determining our behaviors and determining the definitions of justice and determining what is right and what is wrong. What is the relationship, and how does the relationship between a wife and a husband should look like? What is equity? What is a woman's rights? What is a man's rights? What is children's rights? What is our the society, and how should we define human rights? And the list goes on and on. If you're basing it based on what the liberal or the different atheist perspective is, you're going to go on and on with the delusion. And when we're talking about going down, it has no limit. When you go down, there's no limit to how far down you will go. It will not end with LGBT. It will go farther down, with more and more letters coming in, with more and more deviation coming in. It will be endless in downness, in lowness. It will not end. And that's why when those that are considering that the leaders وَقَالُوا رَبَّنَا إِنَّنَا أَطَعْنَا سَادَتَنَا وَكُبَرَاءَنَا, when they would say we had obeyed our masters, our leaders, those that were defining things for us. In other words, when we're talking about sadatana, it doesn't always mean those in authority, in political authority, but it can also include those that are professors, those that are media outlets, those that are in those leading positions, defining for you the things around you. You would then, not you, sorry, but those in hellfire would then say, well, we just followed their ideas, we just followed their understanding, we just followed their understandings, we just followed what they were suggesting as right and wrong. But in order to stay steadfast and make sure that you don't go into that delusion, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, look at this. I really wanted to, oh, sorry about that. The page went away. So let me, sorry about that. Now, when we look at that part of that ayah, it is actually from Surah An-Najm. And I'm going to focus on that just a little bit, because when we're looking at that ayah, you could see when we're talking about how to be steadfast, you could see that ayah right there, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, sorry about that, but that last slide, my daughter changed the program of my PowerPoint and now I have to fix it again. Anyhow, so what the ayah, you could see يَتَّبِعُونَ إِلَّا الظَّنَّ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that they follow speculation and that وَمَا تَهْوَى الْأَنفُسِ, and what their nafs inclinations, or the nafs, what it decides for them. وَلَقَدْ جَاءَهُم مِّن رَبِّهِمُ الْهُدَى, even though they got the guidance from Lord Almighty. أَمْ لِلْإِنسَانِ مَا تَمَنَّى. Notice that the ayah is saying, أَمْ لِلْإِنسَانِ مَا تَمَنَّى. Is it that man, whatever they wish, is going to be the reference that is regarded as that area that determines right and wrong? فَلِلَّهِ الْآخِرَةُ وَالْأُولَى. What propagates or what determines right and wrong is really based on what preceded life and the end of life. Now you live in between. The beginning of it and the ending of it is actually what determines what life and where we should be heading and what we should be doing in our knowledge and how we understand the world around us. وَكَم مِّن مَلَكٍ فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ. How many of the angels? لا تغني شفاعتهم شيئا. So even if you would think that, well, I'm basing my knowledge on this or that person or that philosopher or that leader, if angels themselves cannot be the ones to intercede for you, unless Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would allow that. إن الذين لا يؤمنون بالآخرة لا يسمون الملائكة تسمية الأنثى. Giving us an example how that when they had named the malaika and given them female names, when they had given them the female names, it wasn't really based on knowledge. But that wasn't just in naming angels, but that is also in understanding the world around you. That is also in understanding the world around you. How do we understand justice? How do we understand human? What is a human? What is a female? What is a male? And in the end, وَمَا لَهُمْ بِهِ مِنْ عِلْمٍ. And they don't even have the knowledge for it. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, مَا لَهُمْ بِهِ مِنْ عِلْمٍ. They don't really know. It's not even based on ilm. إِن يَتَّبِعُونَ إِلَّا الظَّنَّ. Again, they just follow speculation, and dhann, that speculation is really nothing compared to truth. So how do I stay steadfast and not fall in this? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَأَعْرَضَ عَمَّنْ تَوَلَّى عَنْ ذِكْرِنَا. Stay away from those that turn away from the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and those that their focus is only on this life. If that's their focus, don't be friends with those, because they will have that influence on you. If their focus, if their only issue is just talking about dunya, talking about makeup, talking about the houses that they're going to be buying, and talking about the shopping, and talking about all the movies that they're watching, you don't belong with that person, because eventually they will indoctrinate you without you realizing. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَأَعْرِضْ. Stay away, turn away from those that will stay away from the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why? ذَلِكَ مَبْلَغَهُم مِّنَ الْعِلْمِ.